So I have to admit, the only reason why I agreed to help Tierney do a talk tonight is I wanted to talk about Star Trek. How many of you have heard of Star Trek? You like Star Trek? Yes, awesome. And you guys all have popcorn? Yes? If you don't have popcorn at your table, I highly recommend getting some popcorn because my presentation is about watching videos of Star Trek, talk about technology. So you need to have some fun. And actually, I don't really have a presentation. The whole idea is to talk to you guys about the technologies they had in Star Trek, how much of that has actually come true today, and what can we as nonprofits do about it. So you guys ready? All right, let's go. Of course, beam me up, Scotty. I will admit, I got really excited thinking about this one. I was trying to come up with technologies that can show you we can beam people, so I don't actually have to, walk to work or bike to work. I can just beam myself over, looking all great. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet. We can't quite beam people, but what we could do right now with technology is finding out where people are. So with GPS in your smartphone, you can figure out where you are if you're lost, like I do all the time. When I go to a different city, I half of the time have to really rely on my Google Maps to tell me where I am and how am I going to my next meeting. So that's just me. I have no sense of direction. But with GPS, not only would they know where you are, they can also know what are some of the things that are close to you, right? So let me show you some examples. Let's go with something really crazy. This picture at the bottom here is what they call it a GPS-enabled snowboarding goggle. I heard about it because my little brother-in-law got to try it at Whistler this Christmas. So what it does is when you're snowboarding down a mountain looking very cool, the goggle has this screen that pops up inside the goggle. It will tell you what speed you're going at, what elevation you're going at, and if you do big air, the distance that you have traveled. Now, I don't do that, but I think it sounds really awesome. And that kind of technology already exists, and they're already using it. So let's kind of think about what can that mean in the nonprofit sector. Is that it captures your motion, it captures where you are, it captures your location. What that means is people who may or may not be able to know where they are, like someone like me, you can now locate them easier. So above here is actually a GPS signal that they put in shoes for Alzheimer patients. A lot of the time, Alzheimer patients may not know where they are, who they are. So even if you were to find them, they are very disoriented. And it can be very difficult sometimes, especially if they don't have ID on them, to really figure out how to help them, right? So with the sort of GPS chip embedded in their shoe, you can now find out information about their identity. You can then help them to contact their families or their doctors or any practitioner that's working with the patient. So that's one solid example. And for tonight's discussion, I kind of want you guys to get beyond what I'm saying up here, is knowing that we can use something like GPS technology. What are some of the ideas that we can come up with, right? Another great example is QR codes. If you have your smartphone and you're inclined to try this tonight, you can actually just scan it and it will take you to either a website or a picture or a video of your choice. I'm not going to tell you what this QR code is, but you can probably guess. So for those of you that have an iPhone or basically any smartphone, feel free to try it out. What that means is it now bridges the traditional gap of online and real life interaction. A lot of the time we have in-person activities like tonight where you come to a location, we gather, we talk about something. And then we have a website where we have information. More often than not, these two kind of exist in two different worlds, right? With QR codes, you can now take what you are putting online into a location. So if I print out something about an event, I can now put it in a particular location at Dundas Square, for example. And anybody that scans that particular QR code from Dundas Square that goes to my website, I would know that that's where they found out about me. So that's information that I can now find out about my audience, is where are they when they found out about a particular campaign that I'm running, which is kind of interesting. And To make these QR codes is very easy. There's a lot of free websites that you just basically enter in your data, and then they'll give you the lovely picture that you can now print out and put into your sort of offline print collateral. So that is kind of location-based and GPS ideas. What I'm hoping in the discussion we can have tonight, again, is to really brainstorm creative ways where we can think about what campaigns we're already doing. And then if we can now use location-specific technology, what are some of the fun things we can do, right? How can we come up with interesting ideas that you normally may not think about before? Okay, so the next one. I don't know how many of you have seen this episode of Star Trek? Okay. So what happened was they went back in time, so from the future to present day. You'll notice that is an Apple Mac 2, or it's an old Apple. And it was a funny kind of interaction between them and the computer. And at the time, obviously, it was to demonstrate how ahead the technology was compared to...
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard? Oh, great.
Of course, when this came out in, I think, 1985, we all laughed because at the time, the idea that we can just say computer is kind of really out there, right? Well, I don't know how many of you have the latest iPhone 4. Sorry. This is not going quite as seamless as I thought.
We have a flat tire.
How do I tie a bow tie again?
What's the fastest way to Hartford Hospital? Do I need an umbrella in New York this weekend?
Remind me to call Chris when I get home.
Move my meeting from 3 to 4.
What does a weasel look like?
Remind me to get milk when I leave work.
Tell my wife I'm gonna make it.
Wake me up at 6.
Play some Coltrane.
I'm locked out.
I found 3 locksmiths fairly close to you.
Say hello to the most amazing iPhone yet.
Okay, that's a commercial, but you get the point. So the idea is, it's not just about give voice commands to your computer. Voice recognition technology has finally got to somewhat of an extent where it can understand what you're saying to it. So you can actually say, computer, give me the, tell me if it's going to be warm in San Francisco this weekend. And Siri can actually reply what the weather is in San Francisco. It's pretty amazing. Again, what does that mean in our nonprofit world? Well, if you think about it, a lot of the time, not all of us can actually use the keyboard like Scotty's forced to do in that clip. By using voice recognition and allowing us to be able to communicate to the computer in a more natural way, that means a lot of the barriers that people may have with the technology in the past is not necessarily as much of a barrier anymore. Or people who may have certain disabilities and cannot type on the computer can now interact with the computer as if they're typing on it. Or you can be multitasking, so if you cannot go to the computer and send an email, you can do that. I unfortunately tried a different program. It wasn't Siri. Today on my iPhone, I can actually say, email Tierney Smith, subject, I'm going to be late for work. Message, I'm still getting lunch. It says something like, I'm very munch, or something like that to her. So she got the message going, I have no idea what you mean. So there's improvements to be made. But what I do want to kind of bring it, the idea is that how we interact with our technology is changing. It's now becoming part of our lives. And then another quick clip I'm going to show you. I want you guys to tell me if this technology exists today. It's not his eye.
Tom. Mr. Forge, I understand that before the Genola
crashed, it had conducted an extensive survey of the Dyson sphere.
Now, I know Steve Jobs is brilliant. I know he likes to create things out of thin air, but dude, that's an iPad. Okay, so I think Picard, or Star Trek, actually invented iPad before Steve Jobs did, right? And you'll notice a lot of the Star Trek episodes, basically Picard would be holding the PADD pad system, and he's using his fingers to flick, and he's reading on it like an ebook. That is something that is in the stores now. So it's not that crazy anymore to actually carry your technology with you. Pretty exciting, huh? I thought that was really cool. Anyway, so the biggest trend again this year at the Consumer Electronics Show is that technology is becoming mobile. Desktop computers is on the decline. More and more people are not just buying laptops, they're buying what we call ultrabooks, which is a hybrid between a tablet and a laptop. So it has the power, computing power of a laptop, but it's just smaller. It doesn't have a CD in it. It doesn't have a hard drive. Instead, they have what they call it solid state drives, which just, it's a fancy word of saying it stores, it's like a huge memory disk, basically. So it stores a lot of information without having to spin up and spin down, which means it's a lot lighter for you to carry around. The tablet, obviously, is still the trend for the next year or two. What that means is a tablet is not like a normal computer in that it runs apps instead of software, right? So with an app, what that means is a lot of your actual computing power doesn't happen on your tablet, it happens in the cloud. And this is the next trend, is cloud computing. So instead of buying a software, install it on your computer and do everything that is on your computer local, what's happening now is you're using essentially your tablet or your Ultrabook or your laptop as a gateway to this giant, massive computing power in the cloud that resides on other computers and other servers. It's quite interesting because what that means is you're no longer limited by the power of your own machine that's on your desk. So now we can link all these giant computers together, and all you have to do is use your machine to talk to it and send command and say, I want to know about all these exciting things. For the nonprofit world, that is kind of significant, and I'm actually going to talk to you guys a little bit about big data later on, is that I want us to think beyond the Excel spreadsheet, our access databases, our donation databases, right? Because eventually, as we move a lot of these storage of information, computing of information, analysis of information off into bigger machines that's distributed out there, and all we need is a relatively simple device like a tablet or a small computer to access it. What that means is we don't have to do a lot of the legwork ourselves, and we can actually contribute and truly collaborate and work on bigger projects together and look at ways where we can maybe integrate all of our data together and look at what kind of trends we can now determine in our sector, right? We all know what's happening in our communities, but what happens if we can actually link the data we have with each community into the bigger sector? It would be interesting to kind of see what information we have and how we can collaboratively come together and troubleshoot together. So that's why I kind of get excited when I think about cloud computing and cloud technologies, because I really truly believe that as a nonprofit sector especially, because we don't have the money, we don't have the enterprise level infrastructure, this is something that we can truly take advantage of. And I hope that we can discuss that tonight a little bit. Okay. All right, so hello computer. Whoops. I showed you that one? Okay. So this brings up to the big data thing. The clip I really liked was actually data, asking for a lot of data.
Computer, this is Lieutenant Commander Data. Please access all Starfleet command orders to starships, starbases, and colonies for the last 6 months.
This is slightly long, but you get the idea.
Startling. Quite extraordinary, in fact.
Direction unclear. Please repeat request.
That was not a request. I was simply talking to myself.
That wasn't about big data. It's just a really fun clip. But the idea is, in the future, or even now, we're actually moving to that direction. We are collecting so much data on a daily basis, right? If you think about how data was produced in the past, it's records. We store them in a database. It's usually something we type into a database, right? But now we're collecting different kinds of data. We have video, we have audio, we have pictures, we also have your traditional type of data. In fact, we're generating the latest, what I saw from IBM is that I actually had to find out how many zeros. We're generating 25 quintillion bytes of data a day. That's 25 and then 18 zeros, bytes of data. Actually, my brain couldn't really comprehend what that is. That's a lot. I think that's what, 6 times a billion or something. I can't do math. But that's a lot. So that's in one day. In fact, if you look at all of the data that we have right now, 90% of the data we have is generated in the last 2 years. That's incredible, right? So what that means is our traditional ways of thinking about databases has to change because our traditional ways of collecting data has changed. And what this means is we need to think of different ways of not just having a big database and put all of our records into it, and because databases demand things to be stored in a very standard way. With big data, it's really about how do you integrate all of our data together and different types of data, because it's a volume of data, the speed at which we need to process it, and then also how do you analyze it for different purposes. It's a boggling thing for computer scientists to work on right now, and a lot of these huge IT companies, that's one of the big projects and the latest trend for them to work on is how do you actually collect and process big data. Governments are also working on that as well. So let's bring it back to the nonprofit sector a little bit. We can't get to the big data step just yet. But what we could do is think about what happens if we can pull our data together. What happens if we adopt what they call open data standards? It's really how do we openly share data with each other? How do we try and have the conversation of exchanging data in a form that is useful for everybody? So develop standards to say, okay, well, we're going to collect our data this way. And then if everybody in the social service sector collect data in a certain way, what that means is now you can put all the social service related data together, and now it becomes very interesting. You can analyze data not just at a community level or city level or provincial level or country level. We can take it to the global level, right? It's very fascinating, and it's going to take time for us to get there. But again, tonight isn't about what can we do today. Tonight I hope we can have discussions of what ifs. Let's not consider the barriers. Let's really concentrate on the if, because I think that would be interesting of what ideas we can come up with. You can tell I'm getting excited, so okay. I do want to show you guys really quickly about data visualization. And this is something we can do. Okay, so that's how many zeros? 25 quintillion? That's what it looks like. Okay, so this is, I just want to talk really quickly about it. It's infographics. This is also the trend that's happening. It started last year. I think it's going to really pick up steam as well. And this is something we can do today. Is once you have all this data and you analyze it and you want to be able to explain it to people, it's really a fancy way of saying we're going to use graphs to tell you what the numbers mean. That's how I translate infographics. It's just a really creative way of explaining a very complicated concept. So this particular infographic is about the world of data and how we're actually using data. The fact that it says here the number of emails that we send every second is 2.9 million emails are sent every second. And then every household, what's this one? We consume 275 megabytes of data per household a day. So this is pretty insane how much data we're using these days. And go back to that, we produce 25 quintillion, gazillion bytes of data. So that is a reality that's happening now. As in a nonprofit sector, where we have data and we want to explain to, say, our funders the importance of what we do, our mission. This is one thing I do want us to think about as well, is instead of having a really nice letter and say, you should help, you should really support this cause because we do these awesome things in the community. Maybe let's think about how can we visually explain what we do, and using data to kind of say, you need to care because this is the number of people that are affected by this issue a day, and then put it in a graphic form. So it's infographics. Okay, I'm almost done. The last part, which is the part that you guys were probably like, what? Gaming. I'm going to start with a holodeck, and then we're going to come back to reality, okay?
Something in Saturn.
It has to do with the board.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, but we're closing. And you do understand we have a strict dress code, so if you boys don't leave right now. I'm looking for Nicky the Nose. The Nose? Hasn't been here in months. This is the wrong chapter. Computer, begin chapter 13.
Okay, holodeck. Again, we're not quite there yet. But where gaming is going is moving away from things like first-person shooters, hunting rabbits or deer, into really trying to immerse the user into a user experience. So where gaming is going is more towards 3D. Now you guys probably have heard about 3D TV, yes? Or 3D movies? Have you guys seen 3D movies in the theater? Yeah. Yeah, okay. And you probably saw 3D TVs at Future Shop, right? Okay. Idea is that they basically try to duplicate reality and allow you to see 3D. It's pretty exciting, it's pretty interesting, but to most non-gamers, we're kind of like, what benefit does that actually have to society? So these guys actually use the same 3D technology they use for gaming and then started a completely 3D virtual environment to educate kids about technology. I'm sorry, some of these are kind of commercialized, so...
In this film theater environment, we basically have, this is the piece we did computer animation, but as you can see, it's being mapped completely around the sphere, which is normal. But when you put on the glasses, basically everything becomes completely 3D. So as I look out here, we see this nanotube coming toward us, and it's fully volumetric 3D, you're moving through it. We can walk around the theater, and it's 3D everywhere. It's volumetric, it's everywhere, it's omnidirectional. And what this means is the coveted holodeck from Star Trek that was always a fantasy can now be a reality. We can create environments, like in the show Minority Report, that you can grab and interact with the environment around you.
So the rest is talking about how awesome their company is. But what I really get excited about is now with the gaming technology, it's really interesting what you can do for education for children. To get them interested in sciences, to explain to them how molecules work, or for biology, what is a virus? How does a virus break down a cell? That kind of thing. You can now immerse the kids into that world and get them to experience it on a whole different level. And also, too, Google actually built, I probably don't have it here. No, I don't. Google actually took Google Earth.
It was.
Oh, it was?
Expect.
Whoops. Oh, no, that's actually something else. Oh, yes, it was. Again, it's not quite the holodeck, but they took Google Earth and did this with it. Okay, you get the idea, right? So again, let's think about the possibilities. This is something that's really easy to put together. Google Earth actually is launching a nonprofit program. They have already launched a nonprofit program in Canada where nonprofits can download the Google Earth app and actually develop campaigns or projects with it. So I encourage you guys to check it out. And again, of course, it's going to be a little harder to put together this 3D sort of Google Earth lab, but it's technology that exists now that we can use. And I'm thinking more so in the education field, but I think tonight, if again, we can kind of put our brains, thinking hats on, and think about how can this be applied to your own work as well. Okay, so while I'm on that, we mentioned the Kinect earlier. So I kind of want to say, again, games are moving away from shooting, but more about capturing motion. So these are some of the popular games out there. Kinect Adventures is really to encourage children to actually move about and start dancing around and exercise. I will admit, this is how I exercise. I use the Your Shape fitness game. It's really cool, actually. It would know when I'm cheating because it has this infrared camera that will scan me and it does facial recognition. So it's not like I can get my husband to go in and do 50 push-ups. It knows the difference and it'll actually call it out. And if I use the Wii, it would know if it's my husband because the Wii board measures how much you weigh and it would say, woo, you gained quite a bit of weight since your last exercise. So it's really hard to cheat. These two, this is Dance Central and this is Child of Eden. What they really do is to help kids to really, well, again, learn dance moves, well not kids, just anybody. Learn dance moves, music, and tempo and motion. So we can, you guys will have a chance to try this out later if you want it. There's another one called Leela, and because Kinect camera is not just a video camera, it's an infrared camera. What they do is use the infrared, which means they can scan for your body's heat, that will, where you're emitting heat on your body, and they use that for meditation. And it's a meditation game, and they will tell you, and they can sense basically if you're calming down, your movement and everything. It's basically using biofeedback to try and improve your fitness. So that's kind of where gaming is headed. It's quite interesting. I want to bring this up because I kind of think that anytime when you take gaming technology into the non-gaming world, the applications can be very fascinating. And I know that Microsoft is actually launching Kinect for the PC later on this year. I'll show you a really fast example of that. This is more Minority Report and less Star Trek, The idea. What that means is instead of us going and sitting in front of a desk and use our mouse all day and click on files, you can now use the Kinect as your controller and use your hands and basically be like, I want to open up this file, I would like to look at this picture, and I'm done, it can go to the garbage. So we don't have to sit around all day, which means actually sitting all day working is bad for you, and if we're standing and moving, it's actually healthier. And I hate to say this, but my husband uses the Kinect for his video driving game, and it tracks head movements. So again, in the game it's neat because it will know which way you're looking, and then it would be as if you're driving the car looking to the side window, right? But think about an application of that in real life. Someone who's paraplegic, who can't move, or quadriplegic, now you can use the Kinect and head movements to allow them to be able to use the computer. And if they can have, using certain movements, etc., you can program it to allow them to, and using voice recognition, they can now send an email on their own and start using the computer on their own, not having to use a mouse or a keyboard, which is pretty fascinating. So I'm going to wrap my little chat here. I want actually now for us to really think about the possibilities and discuss it that way. Yeah, great.
Great.